The fog wasn't just outside. It was in me. A cold, cloying dread that had seeped into my bones and refused to leave. It pressed in, thick and gray, erasing the familiar shapes of the ancient pines, turning them into monstrous, indistinct specters. Every breath I took felt like I was inhaling grave dust. My brother, Jean-Pierre, a boy of 15 who still believed in the strength of his own hands, sat across from me. He was sharpening a piece of firewood into a pathetic point, his brow furrowed, his eyes darting to every creak of the ancient timbers that made up our hut. He didn't have to say it. The fear was a living thing between us, a third presence in the room. Papa was gone. 2 days. Out with the hunting party, chasing a phantom, a demon that walked on 4 legs and thirsted for blood. He told us to stay inside, to keep the fire stoked, as if a few dancing flames could scare away the night's horrors. "It's too quiet," I whispered, the sound raw and unfamiliar in my own throat. The words hung in the air, heavy and dark. Jean-Pierre grunted, not looking up. "It's the fog, Marie. It swallows sound." But his voice was thin, reedy. He knew. We both knew. The quiet wasn't natural. It was the hush before the kill. 3 weeks ago, it was Jeannie, the shepherdess. They found her in the woods. No, I corrected myself. They found what was left of her. Her throat wasn't just torn, it was obliterated, a gaping ruin. The villagers spoke of teeth like daggers, a maw that could unhinge. The tracks. God, the tracks. Too big for a wolf, too strangely shaped, as if a wolf had tried to stand upright, its paws distended and wrong. Last week, old Michael's ox, dragged, that was the word, not eaten, not chased, dragged. A beast of a creature, pulled like a child's toy from the middle of the field. And then 3 days ago, Avers, a whole village, silent, empty. No bodies, but the blood. I saw it myself, on the door jambs, a dark, congealed smear that pulsed with a memory of terror, and the smell. They call it musk and sulfur, a scent that clung to your clothes and seeped into your soul, promising unnatural things. That's when the sheep started. Not the nervous, skittish bleating for a fox, but the sound that ripped through the heavy air, a frantic, guttural scream of agony abruptly cut short, ending in a wet, choking gurgle. Jean-Pierre's breath hitched. The sharpened stake clattered to the floor. My heart hammered against my ribs, a desperate bird trapped in a cage. I snatched the musket from above the mantel, its cold iron a shock against my numb fingers. It was ancient. It was heavy. It was designed for men stronger than me, but it was all we had. And then the sound. A wet, sickening thump, drag, thump, drag, from the back of the hut. It was coming from the direction of the lean-to where Papa kept his tools. My mind screamed. No, it's just the wind, just the branches. But the sound was too deliberate, too heavy. It was a rhythmic, awful symphony of flesh and mud. The rhythmic dragging stopped. I swear I heard it. A deep, raspy inhale right outside the thin wooden wall. It was sniffing us. The growl started low, a guttural rumble that vibrated up from the packed earth floor and through the soles of my worn boots. It was not a wolf. Wolves howled. Wolves snarled. This was something else. A predator's purr. If a predator was born in hellfire and fed on human screams, it was the sound of ancient hunger, of malice distilled. Then a sudden explosive crash from the back. The lean-to. Timbers splintered. I heard Jean-Pierre whisper a small lost sound. "Stay back," I choked out, my voice a ragged whisper. I pressed myself against the door frame, trying to steady the musket, but my hands were shaking so violently I thought I might drop it. The smell. It hit me then, overpowering the damp earth and pine smoke. Musk. Overwhelming, primal, and sulfur. Bitter and acrid, like a forgotten corner of a blacksmith's forge. Alvars. Another crash, closer this time, against the hut itself. The wood groaned under immense pressure. I heard something scratching, scraping at the logs. No, not scratching. Clawing. The sound of nails on wood, thick and hard, tearing at the very fabric of our sanctuary. The growling intensified, rising in pitch, a symphony of pure, unadulterated rage and hunger. I knew with a certainty that chilled me to my core it was not just outside, it was here, and it wanted in. Then through a knothole in the wall I saw it. Just a glimpse. A flash of matted reddish fur, and an eye, a single, enormous eye, glinting with an intelligent, malevolent green light, reflecting the dying embers of our fire. It was too big, too wrong. It stared straight back at me. And it winked. No, it was just a trick of the light, a spasm. It couldn't have. But the memory of that terrifying, knowing gaze locked me in place. Suddenly a blood-curdling scream tore through the night from just outside our hut. Not a human scream. It was Papa's hound, old Bess, a loyal, fearless hunter. The scream ended abruptly in a wet, gurgling crunch. I heard it again. Thump. Drag. Thump. Drag. Again, moving away from our hut now, out into the grey abyss of the fog. It was leaving. Or was it? Wait here, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Jean-Pierre looked me, his eyes wide and pleading. No, Marie, please. But I was already moving. I had to know. Bess. I unbarred the heavy door, the sound deafening in the silence. The cold air rushed in, carrying with it the sickeningly sweet smell of fresh blood and the omnipresent musk and sulfur. I stepped out into the swirling gray. The fog was a living thing, swirling, shifting, revealing, and then snatching away horrors. My gaze fell upon the darker patch just a few paces from the door. A shape, lying unnaturally still. It was Beth, or what was left of her. My breath caught in my throat. A choked sob. Her body was a grotesque parody of life, torn open, her entrails spilling onto the frozen ground like glistening dark ropes. Her head was twisted at an impossible angle, almost severed. A single lifeless eye staring up into the oppressive fog. The ground beneath her was a slick, dark pool, streaming faintly in the cold. But it wasn't Bess. It wasn't just Bess. Nearby, tangled in the gnarled roots of an ancient oak, was another shape. Human. My heart seized. No. Please, no. I forced my feet forward, each step a Herculean effort against the invisible bonds of terror. As I drew closer, the fog seemed to part as if revealing its masterpiece. It was Father Antoine, the village priest, or what remained of him. He lay on his back, his cassock ripped to shreds, revealing the raw red ruin of his chest and belly. His hands were clasped over his face as if in a final futile prayer, but the fingers were gnarled and broken. His eyes, though obscured by his hands, seemed to bulge with unspeakable horror, visible beneath the mangled flesh. But it was his neck, his poor, exposed neck that drew my gaze and held it, freezing the blood in my veins. It wasn't just bitten. It was a gaping, pulped wound. The skin was peeled back like a fruit, exposing muscle and sinew, glistening bone and something else. A section of his trachea, ragged and white, protruded from the mangled mess as if something had tried to rip it clean out. And then I saw the mark. Etched into the frozen mud beside his head, a single, enormous paw print. It was too big. Bigger than any wolf, larger even than the largest bear. And the claws, not rounded, but long, almost like human fingers, ending in needle-sharp points. A shiver, colder than the Gevaudan winter, ran through me. This wasn't an animal. This was a nightmare made flesh. I heard it again. Thump. Drag. Thump. Drag. Fainter this time, disappearing into the impenetrable gray. It was leaving, but it would be back. It would always be back. I stumbled backward, the musket falling from my numb fingers, clattering uselessly against the frozen earth. The smell of blood, fear, and sulfur filled my lungs, making me gag. I ran back to the hut, slamming the heavy door shut, fumbling with the bar, my hands slick with sweat. Jean-Pierre was huddled in the corner, whimpering. He didn't need to ask. My face must have told him everything. We were alone, and it was still out there. And it was hungry. I'm Courtney.
And I'm Brandon, and welcome to the Time Travelers Club Halloween special. Today, we are going to talk about a terrorizing case in history mystery. The Beast of Gevaudan, also known in French as La Bête du Gevaudan, is the historical name of a man-eating animal or animals that terrorized the former province of Gevaudan, now the department of Lozère and part of Haute-Loire in south-central France between 1764 and 1767. The creature, whatever it may have been, was blamed for a series of brutal attacks, primarily targeting women and children, and working in fields or tending livestock. Sources vary, but estimates suggest there were over 200 attacks, resulting in about 60 to 113 deaths and many more injuries. Perhaps curiously, and definitely most gruesomely, the victims were often killed by having their throats torn out, and some were even partially eaten. With that in mind, today we will be brave and face something almost scary as Rome's rampant misogyny. So, let's go back to where it all began. The year 1764 had begun like any other in the rugged, forested province of Gevaudan. Life here moved slowly, dictated by the rhythm of seasons. On a fine spring day, perhaps in the heart of May, a young woman was deep in the Mercor forest, tending to her family's robust herd of cattle. She was alone, relying on the predictable presence of large, placid beasts for company. Then the air shifted. From the shadowed tree line, a creature emerged. It moved with a speed and confidence that made her blood run cold. But its appearance was what truly froze her. It was, according to her, not just a wolf. It was the size of a cow or a young calf with shaggy reddish brown coat and broad chest. Its snout was long, its ears stood rigid, and the movements had a terrifying, agile grace. It was a phantom, a thing she would later describe as, quote, a wolf, yet not a wolf. The beasts charged the young woman, but before it could reach her, the herd had responded. The bulls, sensing unnatural predatory intent, turned as one and lowered their horns. They charged the attacker, defending their tender. The creature, unnerved by the unexpected aggression, recoiled and fled back into the dense undergrowth. The woman hurried home, shaken but alive. The villagers, used to dangers of the forest, listened to her frantic story with skepticism. A fierce wolf? Yes, a massive monster that charged men and that was repelled by cattle? Surely the girl was hysterical. But the beast, seemingly emboldened by its failed hunt, returned a short time later, attacking the herd again. Once more, the collective defense of the cattle drove it away. It was a warning, a terrifying prologue to the world of Gevaudan was not ready to heed.
The summer had just begun when the chilling warning gave way to grim reality. On June 30th, 1764, barely a month after the first strange encounter, a 14-year-old shepherdess named Jeanne Boulet was tending her flock near her hamlet of Les Joubac. She was the ideal target. Young, small, isolated, and preoccupied. In the fields that day, there were no heroic bulls to intervene, only defenseless sheep, which the local populace assumed would be the target of any hungry predator. The attack was swift and brutal. When Jeanne failed to return, a search party located her mutilated body. She had been viciously killed, with wounds focused specifically on her head and throat, which were torn out. The terrifying detail that separated this attack from any normal wolf kill was that the sheep were completely untouched. The creature had sought human prey, ignoring the readily available livestock. Jeanne Boulet was buried the next day, her burial certificate marking her as the first official victim of the Les Bêtes de Gevaudan. Her death, quickly followed by other equally gruesome attacks in the weeks that followed, signaled the true dawn of the terror. The beast of Gevaudan was no longer a rumor. It was a lethal, methodical hunter that had tasted human blood and had come back for more. News of Jeanne Boulet's savage end was quickly followed by more blood. In August, a 15-year-old girl was killed near Masmejean.
Mhm.
Then, later that same month, a boy vanished from Chez l'Évêque, his remains found partially consumed. The attacks were no longer isolated incidents. They were a pattern. relentless and growing bolder. By September, 4 more souls had fallen victim, their bodies mutilated in the same signature manner. Panic gripped the hamlets of Gevaudan. People refused to go out into the fields alone. Children were kept indoors, and the vital work of tending livestock, the very backbone of the local economy, ground to a terrifying halt.
And like, let's be really clear about that. This, it's with modern equipment, things like that. It's hard to imagine, but like, this was a very precious time of year. You had a window to harvest and do the things you need to do. If you miss that window on a personal
Winter
level,
is coming.
yeah, but like on a personal level, that would be pretty bad. If entire communities and regions are doing this, that could be a famine for the whole country.
Absolutely.
Not good, not good. But like, what are they supposed to do? Local officials, recognizing the economic and social crisis, could no longer dismiss the beast as a common wolf. They quickly offered a reward for its death, but the challenge was greater than a mere bounty. The creature was seemingly cunning, seeming to stalk the most remote paths and wooded ravines, always appearing when its victim was most vulnerable. The first organized effort was led by Captain Jean-Baptiste Dumel, a local infantry officer. Dumel was a man of the military, a veteran accustomed to the clear rules of battle and the predictable movements of men. He served the Clermont Prince Dragoons and initially viewed the hunt as a routine deployment to deal with an overly aggressive wolf pack. He scoffed at the peasants' tales of a demon. Confident in the prowess of his troops and the firepower of the French army, he mustered local men, organizing them into hunting parties with the discipline of the military patrols. He expected a quick victory, a simple extermination, but the creature he pursued was unlike any enemy he had faced. And, as an aside to his attitude, this is the period of enlightenment. Now, 100 years before, he may have also taken it maybe more seriously, been like, oh, it could be a demon and everything like that. But by this point, the Enlightenment's in full swing. And peasants are considered kind of ridiculous. Like, oh my God, they believe in these old, silly superstitions, unlike us educated aristocrats, right? And even though he's not like probably up real high on that totem pole, to be in the military and to be an officer of any kind, you had to have nobility, So he was educated. And in this, I think, ironically, with the witch trials, that's a great thing when they're educated and be like, you guys, you can't kill people because you think they're a witch. But in this scenario, not taking something seriously because it's just silly peasants that, as we'll find out.
Yep.
They scoured the forest, trying to corner the monster, leading to a fateful confrontation near a nobleman's estate. It was a cold evening in October 1764. The beast brazenly was spotted near the ground of the Grand Chateau de la Beaune, a local noble's residence. It was actively stalking a lone herdsman who had perhaps grown too desperate or too foolhardy to heed the warnings. And I would like to say that I don't think he's foolhardy. We just said that this is a time of year where, as terrified as you are, you get pushed to a point where it's that or starve. So we have to remember a lot of these accounts are written by the aristocracy, who in a few years will be very dead because of the thing called the French Revolution. Because they don't take people seriously.
No,
right.
Seriously, it is. They did not take human life seriously, regardless of societal hierarchy. That was
right, and they didn't understand the plight of people below them. What an idiot for going out there. We told him there's a monster. Yeah, but like it's that or starve. Or if his boss told him to go out there, there's not much he can do. So I mean, and like, so I just want to say, as an aside for the record, it's not like the revolution came from a vacuum. We are seeing here 30 years before that all goes down. Not that this is happening. So keep that in mind as we read forward. The content, the bulk of the content of this, the sources are going to be from the point of view of the literate who were the educated aristocracy. So, a party of local hunters, alerted to the presence of the creature, quickly gave chase. These were experienced woodsmen, not city soldiers, and their resolve was hardened by months of fear. They tracked the beast into the woods of the estate, eventually flushing it into a clearing. There it stood, massive and unmoving, a shadow against the twilight, its eyes reflecting the faint light like coals. The hunters raised their heavy muskets, weapons loaded with shot meant to fell a deer or a bear. They took aim and, upon a shouted command, fired a terrifying volley of shots. The sound shattered the evening silence, and the creature, hit square by the blast, collapsed onto the forest floor. A wave of exhilaration and relief washed over the men. The terror was over. The reward was theirs. They cautiously approached the downed beast, but their celebration was premature. Before they could reach it, the creature began to move. It shook its massive head, seemingly unharmed, and with a powerful surge, it rose back to its four paws. It cast a brief, chilling look at the stunned hunters before turning and vanishing into the deep forest, leaving no trail but the heavy thudding of its retreat. The hunters returned empty-handed, their faces pale not from the cold, but what they had witnessed. Their tale was far worse than the wounds of the victims. I would dare to disagree, but hey.
I mean, perspective.
Right.
Guys. Come on now.
You know, being scared's one thing, having your throat torn out is another, but whatever. Who am I to judge? The beast was a creature that could walk away from a musket volley. It was not merely an aggressive animal. It was a bulletproof demon, a curse upon the land of Gevaudan. I would like to say, for the record, muskets were not very accurate, so it could just be that. You know, I'm not saying the beast wasn't big, but
True.
By the close of 1764, the story, sensationalized and magnified, had reached the court of King Louis XV in Versailles, forcing the crown to take drastic action.
The relentless stream of horrific reports reaching Versailles could no longer be ignored. France, still smarting from its loss in the 7 Years' War, needed stability, not news of a hellish beast humiliating the state. The national press, the 18th century equivalent of modern media, feasted on the lurid details, and the scandal threatened the credibility of King Louis XV. In response, Louis issued a royal decree. The hunt was now a state mission. He officially deployed Captain Dumal and placed him at the head of a contingent of 57 dragoons, soldiers chosen from his own Clermont Prince Regiment. These were professional cavalrymen trained to operate with military precision. They arrived in Gevaudan in September 1764, their polished boots sinking into the rough, frozen earth, bringing with them a sense of military authority that promised swift resolution.
That'll come later.
That will come later. My bad. I saw resolution and I was like, Vive la revolution! No.
No, I have a feeling he's going to be on the other end of that. I don't know 100%.
Probably.
But,
Probably. Dumal, still convinced he was hunting an oversized, aggressive wolf, ordered a massive coordination in hunting efforts known as a battue. I do not speak French. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm. Battue. Mm-hmm.
Battue. Fantastic. Gesundheit.
It sounds cute. For what it is, it sounds cute.
It sounds cute. It sounds like a sneeze.
It's like,
He
we are
commanded
going to organize a
thousands.
great hunt. But
But I'm gonna try and do that every time I sneeze now. He commanded thousands of local villagers to sweep through the woods, driving every animal towards his waiting line of musket-armed dragoons. This was not hunting, it was war. But the campaign quickly descended into failure and frustration.
So just a minute, like that scene where he's like, he can, the local villager, they're driving every animal towards this line. I just imagine that scene from like Snow White, where all the animals are running in like a big herd.
Yes.
All the cute little Disney animals. And just getting blown away. Just, oh no.
They go from Snow White to Bambi really quick.
Like Bambi, where you actually see what happens to mom and all of her friends, like just eyeballs hanging out, but still in that cute Disney style.
God, what in the Happy Tree Friends is going on here?
What is going on in that brain of mine?
But the terrain was an unforgiving enemy. Steep, icy ravines and endless, dense evergreen forests where a creature could vanish in a heartbeat. The beast seemed to possess uncanny cunning, avoiding every trap, outflanking every patrol, and striking in areas the dragoons had just swept. So it was hunting them. It was hunting the hunters. It's great. Dumal's exasperation peaked in February 1765. He organized a grand battue involving over 20,000 men. 20,000 battue.
Oh, people are dying.
People are dying, but we're laughing at words. It's great.
Yo.
But this is nearly the entire able-bodied population of Gevaudan. To systemically comb the vast swath of the forest. We're literally trying to go in there and cover every square inch.
Well, it's very interesting because in a modern sense, this reminds me of like if someone goes missing and having the whole,
the grid sweep. Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of, I imagine this is a lot what it's like. I mean, again, he's kind of coming off as a condescending asshole, but as a more realistic person who does not think this is a bulletproof werewolf demon, and probably is a very large, aggressive animal who has learned that people are very easy targets.
And people are tasty.
And this is a huge forested area. And you do have to approach things with reason, and you can't lose your head. You have if you're going to get anything done. So
there's that. But the villagers marched through a blinding winter storm, which have we learned nothing.
And to be fair, that sounds like that is the other end of that, because it's like, yes, he's logical, but he still views them as peasants.
He literally still uses them like cogs instead of people.
Right. It's like, oh, well, like, come on, just get over it, as he's bundled up.
He's got his furs. These peasants can't afford furs. They don't have them.
Who don't even have food because they were stuck inside.
Exactly,
now we're in winter, like,
hunted.
Hello.
Exactly. But the dragoons were waiting, their fingers numb on their triggers. The result? Nada. Nothing.
Wah,
wah. Wah, wah. The beast was nowhere to be found. Instead, news arrived of a fresh attack kilometers away from the organized hunt, a single brutal kill that was the creature's mocking response to the king's efforts. Dumal, defeated and humiliated, retreated from the region in April of 1765. The beast of Gevaudan had proved that it could not only survive a volley of bullets, but it could also outwit the best military minds in France.
Which I love that. Like, damn it. Well, I give up. walks away. Like, yeah,
No, and
left these poor. Guess you guys are on your own. Peace.
y'all gonna fucking die. No,
Oh
like
my
my thought
God.
process is okay. We know this was during the time period that they would have called like the little ice age, right?
Mhm.
They're thinking, okay, what do bears and wolves and everything do during the winter months?
Right.
Bears hibernate. They're not necessarily out and about and doing the thing. So reasonably, and I'm attempting to get into the mindset. You're thinking
Mhm.
they're going to be a little bit more, I don't know, careless
Mhm.
because they're hungry.
Right.
Because food is not as easily accessible in the winter months. But no, this thing is like
Mhm.
just fine. And we're about to go into the verdant season. We're heading into springtime and we
Mhm.
still haven't caught this thing and food is going to be so much more available. Fuck that, retreat.
Well, I
Like
love that he's like, but he just straight up pieces out. Now that things are abundant, he's like, and now the attacks are going to be even more vicious because they all are about. He's like, you know what? Fuck you guys. Bye.
I'm going home.
And then because I'm so sad, and then they all whipped out their collective books, even though they're illiterate, but whatever. All their collective books that said future victims of the revolution and wrote his name down in big bubble letters because fuck that guy.
Absolutely.
Like,
Fuck that guy.
it's shitty. Like, come on. But the failure of the Dragoons was a bitter pill for Louis XV, forcing him to escalate his response. He summoned the finest wolf hunters in the kingdom. Jean-Charles Marc-Antoine Valmesley Devenal and his son Jean-Francois. Yes, everyone's named Jean. Everyone. Jean-Baptiste,
Everyone.
Jean the girl with an N-E, Jean-Charles, and now Jean-Francois. So, for convenience, the Devenals were renowned wolf catchers from Normandy, claiming to have killed over 1,200 wolves in their careers, which is sad to me. Like, oh, bummer.
Yeah, but at the same time, you can't have them
Mm,
potentially attacking livestock and
I
causing
know.
famines. Like
But
it's
like,
one
it's
of
like,
those things where you have to have everything in balance.
I know. It's just like, but you know that they killed so many of them and a lot of wolves weren't doing that. But it's like, oh, something
No.
happened. Blame the wolves, and that's why they're extinct in like most parts of Europe. And you're just like, this,
Yep.
and this is going to reinforce that. But
Yep, it sure as hell will.
their method relied on deep knowledge of tracking, traps, and poison. Maybe aconite? Listen to our Hick Day Patreon episode. We talk a little bit about that. A stark contrast to the Dragoons' blunt military force. They arrived in Gevaudan in February of 1765, confident that they would quickly bring the local hysteria to a close. Just like Dumas. Good God, the audacity of these men.
Yep.
But the locals, of course, viewed the Devenals' arrival with suspicion because this isn't their first rodeo with a guy who thinks he can fucking do it. And like treating them like they're stupid peasants. These men brought their large, vicious-looking hunting dogs and focused on traditional methods that had little chance against the cunning man-eating creature. They were hunting wolves, while the people knew they were being hunted by the beast. Which, just for your Beauty and the Beast reference right there. The beast!
Please. The beast!
Kill the beast! For 5 long months, the terror persisted. The Devunals scoured the Margeride Mountains, but their traps went untouched. Because, of course, why is the beast going to go after traps? We know what he likes.
Mm-hmm.
Warm blood. So unless your trap is some poor little girl tied to a stake somewhere, like that goat from Jurassic Park, you're welcome
Honestly,
to
that might
image.
have worked,
But
unfortunately.
that might have worked, which I don't want to say that because
Ugh.
these people would have done it because they don't care
I
about the
know damn
message.
well they would have, which is so depressing.
Like, more surprised that they didn't.
Yeah, a little bit.
My thought is that they probably tried, but they just they were like, you know what, these people will kill us if we try it. Fuck it. So you cannot tell me that someone did not throw that idea out there. You can't.
I mean, yeah, they probably did.
Yeah. The beasts, though, seem to actively mock their presence, often striking just hours, yet again, after they searched a particular area. The victim count did not just rise, it soared. By the time the Deauvillons gave up their fruitless chase, the number of victims stood somewhere above 50 confirmed fatalities. God, it hasn't even been a year, and we've got 50. It's like, what? Like, so it started when, did we say? Like, August, September, something like that? So we got September, October, November, December, January, February, 6 months. It's just wild. Like, God. The beast victims were now a grim mounting column in the parish registries, a public ledger of the crown's humiliation. The Deauvillons, having failed to capture the beast, could not return to Versailles to admit defeat. They tried to save face by presenting the king with a massive gray wolf, claiming it was the infamous killer. But the attacks continued unabated, and by July 1765, the disgraced father and son packed their bags and left Gevaudan. The stage was now set for the final and most desperate move. The king would send his personal gun bearer. Which, to be fair, I don't know what this guy's going to do when the wolf experts couldn't do it. But whatever.
I mean,
like, is he like Van Helsing or something?
It might be Van Helsing.
I just feel like the gun bearer, the guy who holds your gun. Okay, sure. I don't know enough about that topic. Maybe he was like the only way he could be a gun bearer if he was just this wild, wild west badass guy. But I don't know. I just feel like he couldn't have had that many more skills than resources, maybe. But the skills,
yeah.
But
questionable.
During the 5 months of the Deauvillons' ineffective hunt, the beast perfected its gruesome craft, multiplying the horror and solidifying its dark legend. The official records, particularly those of the parish priests, became a chilling testament to the creature's methodical brutality, because at the end of the day, statistics kind of don't lie. You know, like the press can spin it one way or the other. Peasants who are terrified out of their fucking minds could say or see things that maybe were exaggerated even if they didn't mean to. But numbers, a sheet that says how someone died and how many of them are dead and the dates of their death do not lie. Unless you're trying to on purpose, but typically not. The attacks were not random acts of starvation. They were precise and specialized. The victims, nearly all young women, girls, and boys, were found with the same signature wounds. The beast ignored the heart, the organs, the limbs, and focused its incredible strength on the upper body. The most common and terrifying details was the severed or crushed head and the ripped out throat. The accounts consistently noted the unnatural amount of blood and the way the bodies were often partially consumed, but only from the neck up. One of the most heart-wrenching episodes involved a young man named not John. You know, that's what happened. You notice that none of the Johns here died. Everyone just need to rename themselves Jean, because he will actively avoid your ass.
Possibly.
But this young man named Antoine de Real, who was attacked whilst tending his sheep. His terrified brother watched, powerless as the beast clamped down on the poor boy's neck. The creature showed the impossible strength, shaking the boy like a rag doll. When the beast finally fled, the family found Antoine with his throat ripped open. The attack so violent that his head was nearly separated from his body. The pattern often confirmed the creature's extraordinary cunning. It was frequently seen prowling near hamlets at dawn or dusk. It would wait, hidden in the brush, watching the small, isolated paths taken by children fetching water or shepherds retrieving stray lambs. It seemed to have learned the daily routines of people, explained the moment a victim stepped even a few feet away from the safety of others. The priests, who filled out the burial records, grew weary and sickened. Killed by the ferocious beast, end quote, became the monotonous inscription of dozens of certificates. The total tally of the dead had now marched well past 50 and continued to climb. The king's military and king's hunters had both failed, and the people of Gevaudan were left with the terrifying realization that they were entirely alone against a seemingly unkillable monster.
In August of 1765, with the dearies gone and the victim count rising daily, Louis XV had one option left: to send his most trusted man, his own porte arquebuse, Francois Antoine. Antoine, a highly respected and highly decorated royal hunter, arrived in Gevaudan with his son and a retinue of highly trained men. Unlike the humiliated dragoons or the arrogant dearies, Antoine operated with quiet authority. His mission was not just to kill a beast, but to restore the honor of the king. He brought better weapons and a greater urgency. Antoine immediately instituted a massive professional hunt. He employed dozens of local men for tracking and drove the woods with relentless military discipline. After weeks of hard labor, the hunters cornered a large animal in the dense Bois de Chazé. On September 20th, 1765, Antoine fired the shot. The animal dropped. The sight of the immense lifeless body filled the forest with a wave of relief so powerful it was almost physical. This wolf was colossal, nearly 5 feet long, and clearly larger than any wolf the locals had ever seen. Antoine declared it to be the beast of Gevaudan. The creature was quickly stuffed and prepared, paraded through the towns to jubilant celebrations, and then transported to Versailles. Antoine presented his trophy to the king, was hailed as a hero, and handsomely rewarded. The crown officially closed the case. The terror surely was over. Or so they thought. The French court rejoiced in its victory, but back in the dark ravines of Gevaudan, a new terror was stirring.
For 2 months, a fragile peace descended upon the mountains. Antoine and his party departed in triumph, leaving behind a province that cautiously began to breathe again. Louis XV received the stuffed beast at Versailles, ending the matter of the royal hunt. The press stopped printing the sensationalized reports. For the world, the beast of Gevaudan was dead. But, apparently, the beast had not read the royal decree. In December of 1765, the murders began anew. A small girl, who's also not named Jean, Marguerite Martin, was attacked and killed. Her body bearing the same signature, brutal wounds, the crushed head and the ravaged throat. Then came another and another. The attacks were just as frequent, just as localized, and just as horrific as they had been before. The creature's terrifying efficiency had not diminished. If anything, it was bolder, perhaps even more feral. The locals were gripped in a terror deeper than before. Not only was the beast still alive, or a second, equally ferocious creature in its place, but the king himself had been fooled and failed. The royal solution was no solution at all. The provincial officials, bound by royal declaration of Antoine's victory, tried to suppress the new reports because that's what we do. When our supreme leader messes up, we try to cover it up. Tell me when
Hide
to
it.
stop when this is familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Are we really surprised? Which is
No.
sad. Like, these people are freaking dying, and it's like, rather than doing their job, which is making sure these people are safe at the end of the day, it's, oh, hush, be quiet. You don't want to piss the king off. I don't care if you're dead. My daughter's dead. Like,
Yep.
damn. So they labeled the renewed killings as the work of, quote, ordinary wolves. But the corpses said otherwise. As 1766 began, the victim count started its second gruesome climb. The local church registries, which had been silent for 2 months, once again filled the chilling phrase, quote, killed by the ferocious beast. The people understood. The first beast, the one that had tormented them, had merely retreated while the king's men chased a colossal decoy. The nobles of Gevaudan, utterly abandoned by the crown, now took matters in their own hands. The Marquis de Opcher, a respected local nobleman, organized hunts funded by his own dwindling fortune. The chase was now a purely local affair, driven by desperate need and intimate knowledge of the Marguerite. By the spring of 1767, the total tally of the dead, the victims of both the first and second waves of attack, had grimly exceeded 100 fatalities.
100 people dead. And they want to
Yeah,
ignore it and sweep it under the
I was
rug.
gonna say that we know of.
That we know
Like,
of. Because
because there
obviously
was
some peasants, they don't matter.
some either think about the people who maybe disappeared and they never found a body, people that were just labeled as, quote, killed by ordinary wolves. Like, if it is all the same beast, I have a hard time also believing that in that 2 months it did nothing.
I agree. Definitely agree.
It maybe it attacked somewhere else and wasn't successful, so it came back or whatever. I don't know. But like, we'll be getting into all of that. But at the end of the day, like, that's with that label, fatality by the beast.
Yeah. So the final hunt. A desperate gathering of local farmers, hunters, and gentry was organized by the Marquis d'Apcher in the summer of 1767. Among the party was a strange, solitary man, Jean Chastel.
Another Jean!
Another Jean.
Another!
Chastel was a local innkeeper and farmer, known less for his hunting prowess and more for his intense, almost mystical piety. Legend says that Chastel had prepared for this moment, driven by the belief that the beast was not merely an animal, but a scourge of God or an agent of the devil. He had visited the local church. There he had a local priest bless 3 silver bullets and load them into his heavy rifle, a crude yet powerful homemade weapon. On the morning of June 19th, 1767, Chastel knelt to read his prayer book in a clearing near Saint-Duver. The other hunters had moved on, and Chastel was alone, his rifle resting beside him. Then, through the mist-shrouded trees, the beast appeared. It emerged from the woods, moving with the heavy, powerful strides described in countless chilling testimonies. It paused, seemingly recognizing the lone man in the clearing. It looked up at Jean Chastel, who, according to the legend, simply closed his prayer book, picked up his blessed rifle, and took aim. He fired. The silver projectile struck the massive creature in the shoulder and it tore straight into its heart. Unlike the wolf shot by Antoine, this creature did not collapse, shake off the blow, and vanish. It simply dropped dead, staining the earth with its blood.
That, come on, badass. That is some Hollywood bullshit. Like, I just want to take a moment. Let's summarize this. He's in this clearing, waiting for the beast. He starts reading his prayer book, holy weapon in hand.
He is Van Helsing.
Mhm. And then from the woods, slowly the beast comes out, staring him down, and he just silently closes the book, picks up his gun. Come on. Come on.
Yeah. That's pretty intense. The jubilant hunters rushed to the scene. They found a creature even more terrifying up close. Colossal, heavy-boned, with a thick, dark coat and a reddish mane running along its back. It possessed a chest so wide it seemed like a bovine, and its teeth were abnormally long and powerful. The sheer size alone justified the 3 years of terror.
The body was immediately loaded onto a horse. That poor horse. And, sorry.
That poor horse.
Like, God.
Like
if
a
it's
carriage, at least. Like, come on.
I'm like, it's bad enough that it's a predator, right? And I can't imagine that, right? But the fact that it also is just so big. Like, if it's to believe. But nonetheless, it was loaded onto said poor horse and brought to the nearby castle of the Marquis d'Aubepierre. There, the official postmortem examination took place, attended by local surgeons, lawyers, and officials eager to document their victory and finally clear the name of their province. What they found was the definitive, grotesque answer to the long nightmare. The most crucial step was opening the stomach. The surgeons found not deer or sheep remnants, but a mass of undigested human remains. Bones and flesh chillingly confirmed the creature's specialization. The officials, including a royal attorney named Etienne Lefont, drafted and signed an official report. So, now the royal somebody shows up, of course. Of
course. After everything's already done. Okay.
Mm-hmm. He certified that this immense dark animal shot by Jean Jastel. Finally, a Jean did it. You did it, Jean.
You did it, Jean.
Was AKA Van Helsing. Was truly la bête de Gevaudan. The terror was definitively over. Only after 1,095 days and after more than 100 documented deaths, the beast was finally silenced by a local man using a prayer and a rifle. Which, granted, I'm on that last.
I know.
We'll see. The death of the Beast of Gevaudan should have brought universal celebration, but I mean, to be fair, they've already celebrated like twice. But instead, it initiated a final pathetic political farce because, again, we're not too far from the French Revolution.
Yep.
This would be in the minds of people in the revolution. Things like this. Incompetence, right? And how a local guy got something done. Jean Castel and his son, now heroes, were entrusted with transporting the carcass. They prepared the remains as best they could, mostly by gutting the animal and soaking the body in crude preservatives like wine and spirits, and began the long 2-week triumphal procession towards Paris, eager to claim the massive bounty. However, the summer heat and crude preservation methods, I think we can see where this is going, meant that by the time they reached Versailles, the beast was in a state of advanced decomposition, because this is the equivalent of throwing this animal in the back of your trunk and leaving it there for 2 weeks.
Yep.
The sight of the bloated, fly-blown, and deeply foul-smelling carcass was profoundly offensive to the quote-unquote refined senses of the court. And I love this part, who were used to the clean, embalmed presentation of Antoine's first wolf. But these are also the same people who literally popped a squat and pissed on the floor.
Yep. Just behind the curtain.
It's that. Their dogs didn't. They just let them do wherever. I just think that's funny that they're so disgusted. But, Versailles does not have plumbing at this time.
Versailles is disgusting.
Yes. But they're grossed out by this body. Whatever. King Louis XV refused to look at it. Having been burned by Antoine's fake beast, and now faced with a rotting, stinking trophy, the king and his ministers quickly dismissed Chastel and the carcass. They coldly informed him that since the royal hunt was officially closed in 65, after Antoine's, quote, victory, no further royal reward would be paid. The crown, determined to save face, refused to acknowledge the terror had continued for nearly 2 more years after their previous declaration of victory. I gotta say, this wasn't going to be a French Revolution episode, but damn, this seems like a big metaphor for what's to come.
Yep.
To save face, refusing to acknowledge truth, refusing to reward people who deserved it, just turning a blind eye to reality.
Do you feel the echoes?
Yeah.
Echo, echo, echo.
Chastel was left to display the body privately in Paris for a brief period before it became too offensive and was finally discarded and forgotten. The true beast was dead, but the crown's humiliation was complete. The people of Gevaudan knew the truth, and their relief was profound and immediate. The attack stopped the day Chastel had fired his rifle, proving that the true monster, the creature that had haunted their waking hours and their dreams, had been vanquished by a simple, pious man from the mountains, leaving a chilling, unresolved mystery that haunts history to this day.
The moment that Jean Chastel's rifle cracked, an immense psychological weight lifted from Gevaudan. People returned to their fields. Children played in the sunlight, and the long, chilling silence that had settled over the province for 3 years was replaced by the noise of work and life. The cessation of the attacks was immediate and absolute, a final proof that the creature killed on the Sang d'Auver was the true source of their misery. For the crown, the beast was a footnote of embarrassment. For the people of Gevaudan, Jean Chastel was a saintly savior. His success was viewed as a triumph of local, faith-driven community over the distant, ineffective central government. Wow. Seeing parallels. The crown's failure to protect its citizens and its subsequent refusal to acknowledge the true death toll, or the true hero, symbolized the monarchy's detachment, feeding the growing resentment that would erupt during the French Revolution.
Dum bum bum.
Dum dum dum. So the mystery of the beast persists, because the one true piece of physical evidence, the massive rotting carcass shot by Chastel, was destroyed in Paris.
The animal killed by Jean Chastel was the legitimate beast, as proven by immediate end of the tax. However, the fate of its body was sealed by the long journey to Versailles and the deep embarrassment of the French crown. This was the main physical problem. Gevaudan was far from Paris, and the journey in 1767 was long and arduous, like we said, taking about 2 weeks in that wonderful midsummer heat. The first problem we have to address is this crude preservation. Chastel and his son, being local innkeepers and hunters, did the best they could, but their methods were insufficient. They gutted the massive animal and attempted to preserve the remains by soaking the body in those crude preservatives like wine and spirits. Like you actually, I feel like this reminds me of like when you go to like Thailand or whatever, and they have like cobras and stuff in like rice wine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like that's what they have access to. They don't have access to chemicals and things like that. So, like,
No,
and
they
that
don't.
probably would have worked in their local town if you kept it in like a cool, dry place, dark place. But it's
like
in
in
the
a
equivalent of a
basement,
trunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, by the time that massive carcass had reached the quote unquote refined capital of Paris, it was in a state of advanced decomposition, the body being described as bloated, fly infested, and smelling truly awful. When the Chastels finally had presented their trophy, the sight was so horrid that the court of Louis XV couldn't accept it. There was also this idea of lack of decorum. The court was accustomed to the clean, professionally stuffed animal. Make it pretty. So when they see Chastel's decaying putrid display, it was considered offensive to these refined shitting on the floor nobles.
They wouldn't know what refined was if it bit him in the ass.
And then, of course, King Louis being so disgusted wouldn't even look at it, right? So you're not, because so you've already got that. If there had been any hope of preserving it, the political timing was even more fatal, though, than the heat. Louis XV had to choose between accepting the rotting carcass and publicly destroying his own credibility. If the king had accepted the Chastel beast, he would have had to publicly admit that his personal employee, Francois Antoine, oh wow, that was for some reason hard for me, had been fooled or had committed fraud in 1765. Admitting Chastel's success would force the crown to also acknowledge that the terror that had continued for nearly 2 more years after the king had officially declared the case closed had been intentional. This was a massive failure of the royal protection and deeply undermined the king's authority, especially since news of the scandal had already been fueling the press. I mean, think about it. Like, when you're Louis XIV, his predecessor, it had really pushed for this idea of, like, God appointing the rights of monarchs, right? Like, this is a period where people are starting to question, right? And the only thing you've got going for you as king, the only thing keeping you there is this like idea that you are better than everyone and will protect your flock, Christ-like. And if you can't even do that, what the hell are you doing?
Exactly.
The fact that it's not even like accidental, like you chose not to do it. Because, like, if he hadn't ever responded to it in the first place, at least it would have been plausible deniability. Like, oh, I didn't know what was going on. Sorry. But, like, you did, and you chose. If he admits that, he would have to admit he chose to ignore it. And so you reject it. Then there was this refusal of reward. You have to maintain that official narrative that the crisis was ended cleanly with Antoine, and the king and his ministers had coldly dismissed Chastel, refusing to pay the reward and effectively declaring his kill irrelevant to the state. It doesn't look good. And of course, Chastel can't preserve it. So eventually, after it gets to a certain point, it has to get thrown out. And this act of political expediency and aesthetic revulsion is what prevented any future scientific analysis and allowed this legendary mystery to continue to take root.
In any case, this absence of a body forces modern analysis to rely on the conflicting and often sensationalized 18th century eyewitness accounts and the forensic details from the victim's wounds. Three major theories dominate the debate. 1. The man-eater or hybrid wolf theory. The official and most academically accepted explanation is that the beast was a member of the Canis lupus species, a wolf or a wolf-dog hybrid that developed an unprecedented taste for human flesh. Proponents of this theory point out that the sheer number of attacks over a vast territory suggests a wild animal roaming freely, not a captive one. The massive size described could be explained by a wolf-mastiff crossbreed, a wolf dog, which would inherit the wolf's predatory instinct and the dog's familiarity with human environments and superior bulk. Critically, wolves attack the throat, which aligns with the victim's signature wounds. The perceived bulletproof nature and extreme cunning are attributed to a beast being an old, experienced, and highly territorial man-eater that learned to target weak points in the organized hunts. Yes and no. I mean, there is another one that I was thinking of where we've seen some really, really weird behavior from animals, and it was just a normal animal. It's just like they were fucked up. And it was a pair of male lions that did something very similarly in Africa.
Yeah, the Barbary lion.
Yeah.
That's
and
a big
I want to do an episode on those because
it's very similar vibes. A lot of incompetency.
Very similar vibes.
A lot of like looking down on locals. It's sad that it's a repetitive story, but yeah. Though the mastiff thing's interesting thought because I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? Mastiffs are really those wrinkles. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And those wrinkles are so that when an animal, say, latches on and it tears, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So if you thought you shot it and you had a hit, you could have just hit one of those wrinkles.
Possible.
And it gets away.
Very possible.
So, like, I mean, it does, I can see, and also mastiffs are huge. So, like, and like the coloration, like I'm thinking like a Saint Bernard or something like that. Like that. I could believe that. And this is not too far from like the Alps and everything. Like that could absolutely have been a thing.
It could have been. It could have been.
Mm-hmm.
But next we go into the exotic apex predator theory. This theory attempts to account for the unique physical descriptions that repeatedly defy the wolf standard. The colossal size, the broad chest, and bovine head, the reddish coat, and distinct mane, because let's be real, dogs don't have a mane. They don't. The short ears and the immense crushing power of the jaw, capable of tearing off the head. These details lead some cryptozoologists and naturalists to suggest that the beast was an animal non-native to Europe, such as a large escaped striped hyena, or possibly a young, large exotic cat, like a lion or jaguar, that may have escaped from a traveling menagerie or a private nobleman's collection. The hyena theory is compelling because hyenas possess incredible bone-crushing strength and feature a reddish coat with a dark dorsal mane, which matches several descriptions more closely than a typical European wolf.
Right. I mean, if we're doing the dog-wolf hybrid, it's like then it could be anything because, dogs come in all shapes and sizes and colors and furs. But, like, if we're strictly looking at, like, it's got to be one animal, like, not a hybrid, then, I mean, hyena would be my thought. Because, again, it's similar MO, and like you said, like wolves don't really have manes, but hyenas do, and they have that
Hyenas
big barrel chest.
Yes,
and
they do.
those weird, like they have very pronounced canines and teeth, with that squat nose. I mean, bovine, if you will.
Possible.
Yeah.
Very possible.
Especially if no one has ever seen a hyena, they're not going to know how to describe it. So,
Like imagine somebody trying to describe to you a camel, but has only ever been around horses or cows.
right. Yeah,
Are they gonna say camel? No, they're not.
right. Well, it's like giraffes. Like they're long necked deer. Like you
Yep.
saw a lot of cases where they would say things like that. Like they were trying to describe, it was like a long necked horse or antelope or whatever. Or even think about hippos. Literally means water horse. Hippos do
I don't
not look
understand
like
how they could
horses.
equate that with horses. But you know what? Like, they're trying. I appreciate them trying.
Hmm. So, the last theory is this idea of a human accomplice or serial killer. The most macabre and popular cinematic theory suggests that the beast was not acting alone, but was a human trained animal or a deadly disguise orchestrated by a local person. This theory is supported by several uncanny factors. Not proof, not widely accepted, but I can see we're going to dive into it anyway. Okay? For fun. First was this targeted attacks, right? The creature consistently attacked people, often neglecting livestock. It's a behavior difficult to attribute to a purely wild, starving animal. Then there's this idea of evasion and intelligence. The beast was able to effortlessly bypass sophisticated traps and organized military suite, suggesting it was being warned or guided by a human controller in this theory. Then there was the signature wound, the almost surgical focus on the head and neck, sometimes described as a severing motion, has led some people to believe that the final fatal injury was inflicted by a blade or tool and not just a bite. Finally, there's the Chastel family link. This theory often focuses on the local innkeeper, Jean Chastel, and his sons, who were notorious poachers. Fiercely independent. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. He's not a monk, Van Helsing hero. Everyone's complicated. They were known for being fiercely independent and known to be antagonistic towards royal hunters. The fact that Jean Castel, after being previously imprisoned by a royal official for refusing to cooperate, was the one who miraculously ended the terror with his blessed silver bullet, conveniently destroying the true beast just as he or his sons were starting to fall under deeper suspicion, is too neat for some historians to ignore. I mean, let's break that down. Which makes me almost sad for the poor animal at that point, because it's like been trained to do this, right? And then Master calls you over and old Yeller style puts you out.
Yeah, God, that's fucked up.
Like it's thinking, oh my God. The possibility that the beast was in fact a carefully manipulated pawn in human killer's game is perhaps the most chilling modern re-examination of the Gevaudan's events. This theory draws on its strength not from folklore, but from the glaring inconsistencies of the beast's behavior and highly suspicious circumstances surrounding its demise, and also that 2-month period. I don't know if I believe it or not. It's very hard, but I can see this, right? If a little bit of tinfoil hat, I guess, on that's the one thing, the 2 months. I mean, you could write that off as, again, just people not documenting it and all that, and I can believe that too. But if we're going with this theory, that also makes sense because someone's feeding it or like there's too much heat on them. And then again, when too much heat's getting on you, you put the beast out of its misery. Make up this crazy story.
Oh my God, I shot it with a silver bullet.
Oh, because Jesus told me to. Yeah.
I was praying by the river with my prayer book.
And it was clearly a demon because it wanted to kill me for it. And I just I just closed my book and took my shots because I was ready to die. Okay.
Oh my God. So dramatic.
If the beast was merely a large man-eating wolf or hybrid, its behavior should have been governed by instinct and hunger. Again, because I could see it just attacking humans. I'm not saying it would necessarily need to attack livestock, because if it's thinking that humans are the easier prey. But it is weird that it doesn't really eat them. Takes love nibbles of their face and neck. Like, what?
Yeah.
What? Yet the beast behaved with unnatural, almost tactical intelligence. The creature consistently ignored the abundant, as we said, easy prey of sheep and cattle, and instead focused on isolated, vulnerable human targets, mostly children and young women. This suggested a learned behavior or deliberate conditioning away from traditional livestock targets. Then there's the targeted mutilation, the signature wounds, the methodical destruction of the head and throat, while leaving the rest of the body relatively intact, are not typical of an animal's feeding patterns, which usually begin with the abdomen or flanks, where the good bits are. Some researchers suggest the beast was used to disable the victim, which now that you think about what they teach like German Shepherds and stuff to do.
Yep. Take them down.
Right. You go for the arm. Well, in this case, you can choose the neck. You know, it makes sense. We train them to go after a limb because that's less lethal. But like if you go for like the shoulder or like the upper arm, but like you could easily train them to go for the throat.
You absolutely could.
And then a human then steps in to finish the mutilation, perhaps the knife, before the creature began to consume the remains. Then there's this impossible evasion, like we said before. The creature's ability to completely disappear before, during, and immediately after massive, coordinated, and organized royal hunts involving thousands of men strains probability for a wild animal. This level of evasion points strongly towards insider knowledge of the hunting schedules, deployment areas, perhaps provided by a local observer or co-conspirator.
The Chastel family, particularly the patriarch Jean Chastel and his sons Antoine and Pierre, became the central focus of the human accomplice theory due to their deep-seated conflicts with authority and their unique relationship with the local terrain. A family of antagonists, the Chastel were known throughout the region as poachers, smugglers, and fiercely independent figures who despised the centralized royal presence in Gevaudan. They possessed a deep, intimate knowledge of the rugged backwoods, ravines, and caves of the Marguerite. So, the family was also known to own large, powerful hunting or fighting dogs, likely Mastiff Wolf hybrids, perfectly capable of matching the size and general descriptions of the beast. A trained dog, or one wearing a form of protective hide explaining the bulletproof nature, and the reddish mane, could easily be mistaken for a demonic creature in the dark of the forest. The most damning piece of circumstantial evidence occurred in early 1767. The king's envoy, Monsieur de Saint-Priest, having grown suspicious of the Chastel's movements and arrogance, had Jean Chastel and his sons briefly imprisoned. During the short period of their incarceration, the beast's attacks ceased entirely. The moment they were released, the attacks immediately resumed. This perfect correlation strongly suggests that the attacks were tied directly to the family's freedom of movement.
Ooh, that's
indeed.
wild. The manner in which Jean Chastel ultimately ended the terror is, in the eyes of skeptics, the final act of self-serving cover-up. First, you have that prophetic moment. Chastel, who was known as a local eccentric, claimed to have stopped and knelt to pray, expecting the beast to appear. This deliberate isolation, the dramatic, premeditated use of a, quote, blessed silver bullets, a technique based on superstition, not hunting skill, looks highly theatrical. Chastel shot the beast on June 19, 1767. This occurred precisely when suspicions against the Chastel family were at their peak, and local authorities were closing in. By killing the animal, Chastel instantly transformed himself from a suspect into a heroic savior, halting any further investigation into his family's strange behavior and whereabouts, which, if I were an investigator, would have been like, that's sus.
A little bit. That's more of a red flag than
Like, oh, it's weird we close in on you and all of a sudden you show up with the dead animal. Huh.
Yep.
Well, but it's a different time, and he knows his audience, clearly. Probably thinking these dumbasses, if I just tell them that God told me to do it.
Pretty much.
Because now I'm starting to sound like those arrogant nobles. So then there's the disposal of the evidence, if you will. There's that disastrous journey to Paris, meant that the definitive proof, the unique jaw structure, the animal's true breed, or species for that matter, and any signs of training or injury were conveniently and entirely lost to decomposition. Had the carcass been preserved and examined by modern standards, the question of its nature might have been settled instantly. Under the human accomplice theory, the beast of Gevaudan ceased to be a monster of nature and becomes a monstrous tool used by a cold-blooded local killer to settle scores, disrupt the monarchy, and indulge in a spree of unprecedented sadism, with the whole affair wrapped up neatly by the killer himself. Regardless of its true nature, the Beast of Gevaudan remains one of history's most terrifying and well-documented episodes of mass panic and slaughter, a grim tale where the lines between animal aggression, religious terror, and political failure were permanently blurred.
The saga of the Beast of Gevaudan culminates not with a definitive answer, but with an enduring, unsettling question. Was the creature a colossal, hyper-aggressive wolf-dog hybrid, a frightening product of nature adapting to new environments? Or was it just the instrument of a human sadism? A trained monster unleashed by a disgruntled local, perhaps Jean Chastel himself, to settle scores and exploit the region's terror. The destruction of the body, the political necessity for a humiliated king, ironically preserved the mystery for posterity. By preventing scientific analysis of the true beast, the French crown inadvertently ceded control of the narrative, allowing the tale to become a fluid metaphor for political failure, religious superstition, and the darkest possibilities of human cruelty. Ultimately, the beast exposed the fault lines of 18th century French society, the ineffectiveness of a distant monarchy, the fervor of local religious beliefs, and the deep abiding resentment between the rural poor and the urban elite. The shadow of the beast remained so long precisely because it forced a community to confront something far worse than a monster: the terrifying prospect that the killer was one of their own.
For the modern imagination, the mystery of Gevaudan is still potent, captivating historians, filmmakers, and cryptozoologists alike, and even podcasters.
Ta-da!
Stripped of the supernatural overlay, the beast's story is essentially an unsolved serial killing spree, utilizing a unique and terrifying weapon, the animal. The human accomplice theory satisfies the modern appetite for criminal psychology profiling and offers a chilling glimpse into the unique form of 18th century premeditated murder that was hidden in plain sight. It also has the markings of a great cryptid story, but unlike Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, the Beast of Gevaudan is a documented historical event. There are over 100 death certificates and dozens of signed official government reports. This blurring of lines between history and cryptid, a monster that undeniably existed, gives the narrative of a unique gravitational pull that fiction cannot match. Finally, the political destruction of the The destruction of the true carcass is the story's greatest tragedy and its greatest strength. The lack of a preserved, scientifically identifiable body means that the question can never be fully answered. This frustrating, tantalizing absence of proof ensures the debate continues, allowing each generation to project its own fears, be they of man, nature, or the government, onto the terrifying creature of the past.
That is it for our very first Halloween special. We hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today, please give us a positive review on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on. It goes a long way for us to appease the algorithm gods and get this suggested to others just like you. The more we can connect to our fellow history nerds, the more that we can build up a community and keep this show going. Also, we have a Patreon where you can hang out with us and get some exclusive content, like videos where we might try to make some ancient recipes, talk about topics that couldn't fit into the main arcs of the podcast, and just generally being batshit and dumpster fires, all for the price of a latte per month. Research materials and books cost a lot of money, and it takes a lot of time for us to create the show, so anything that you can provide would be a huge help. If you have any ideas, comments, or just want to say hi, you can reach us at timetravelersclubpodcast@gmail.com. We can't wait to see you again next week, and as always, thanks for listening.
Bye for now.